Most people think truck driving is just miles and monotony until the road decides to test you. Out here, it's not ghosts or legends that get you. It's real people, real danger, and the split-second decision that decides whether you make it home or vanish without a trace. Tonight, you'll hear 4 true stories from drivers who faced the kind of fear no training prepares you for. From fake breakdowns staged by predators, to imposters in safety vests blocking highways, to the unsettling feeling that someone's hiding in your own cab. These are the moments when routine turns to terror in a heartbeat. This isn't about superstition. It's about what really happens when your instincts scream, but the world around you looks normal. These stories aren't urban legends, they're warnings. Out here, hesitation is a luxury you can't afford. Most people think truck driving is just miles and monotony until the road decides to test you. Out here, it's not ghosts or legends that get you. It's real people, real danger, and the split-second decision that decides whether you make it home or vanish without a trace. Tonight, you'll hear 4 true stories from drivers who face the kind of fear no training prepares you for. From fake breakdowns staged by predators, to imposters in safety vests blocking highways, to the unsettling feeling that someone's hiding in your own cab. These are the moments when routine turns to terror in a heartbeat. This isn't about superstition. It's about what really happens when your instincts scream, but the world around you looks normal. These stories aren't urban legends, they're warnings. Out here, hesitation is a luxury you can't afford. If you think the biggest threat on the road is falling asleep at the wheel, think again, because some warnings don't come with flashing lights. Sometimes it's just a gut feeling telling you to get out. Now. I've been driving since I was 20, logging more miles than I care to count, but there's one night outside Amarillo that still comes back every time I stop at a rest area. It was late November, the kind of Texas cold that settles into your bones, and I'd been behind the wheel for 10 straight hours. My name's Brian Foster, and at the time, I was hauling auto parts from Dallas to Albuquerque. I'd planned to pull over at a truck-friendly rest area right off Interstate 40, the kind with vending machines and enough lights to make you feel halfway safe. But when I pulled in that night, most of the lights were out. There were only 2 other rigs parked at opposite ends of the lot. One was a faded red Kenworth with a beat-up trailer. The other looked like an old moving van, a rider rental with the logo spray-painted over. The whole place felt abandoned. I almost kept going, but the fatigue hit me hard. I needed a break. So I backed into a spot beneath the one working floodlight, shut off the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the tick of the cooling motor. That's when I noticed the moving van's engine idling, even though the driver's seat was empty. I figured maybe the guy went to the bathroom or was checking his trailer, but something about it bugged me. Still, I was dead tired and decided not to let paranoia get the better of me. I made a quick trip to the bathroom, locked up the cab tight, and climbed into the sleeper. I'd just started to doze off when I heard footsteps crunching gravel outside my window. Slow, careful, getting closer. My heart sped up. At first, I thought maybe it was just another driver looking for a chat or a smoke, but something about the pace made my skin crawl. I peeked through the curtain. In the half-light, I could see a shadow by the rear wheels, too far back to make out details. Whoever it was, they weren't making any noise. No coughing, no keys jingling, just the slow scrape of boots on gravel. Then came a faint tap, like fingernails brushing the metal just beneath the window. I froze, barely breathing, and checked the door locks a third time. The tapping moved along the cab, first the side window, then the back. I couldn't see the person's face, but every instinct in me said they were looking for a way in. I considered calling 911, but cell reception was spotty, and I didn't want to make noise. Instead, I sat there tense, hoping they'd move on. Suddenly my headlights flickered on. Full beam, lighting up the lot. I hadn't touched anything. The shadow at my window jolted, then darted away toward the dark end of the rest area. I fumbled for the ignition, convinced someone had just tried to hotwire my truck from outside. The headlights shut off as quickly as they'd come on. I didn't see the person again. Trying to calm myself, I cracked the door and stepped out with my flashlight, scanning the area around my cab. There were fresh footprints in the gravel, muddy, zigzagging from the moving van toward my truck, then off into the brush behind the restrooms. The rider van was still idling, but the driver's door was open, swinging gently in the wind. I called out, "Hey, anybody out here?" Silence. I got back in, locked everything tight and sat up front, engine running. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled in, lights off, and parked by the restrooms. An older deputy named Jacobs got out, shining his maglite around. I flagged him down and explained what happened, pointing at the van. He checked the van and came back with a strange look on his face. "You sure you didn't see anyone get out?" he asked. I shook my head. "That van's been reported stolen," he said. "Last place it was seen was 40 miles east." He ran the plates, called it in, and poked around for a while, but didn't find anyone. When he checked the security cameras, all the footage was grainy, except for one stretch between midnight and 2 a.m., when the system had lost connection. According to Jacobs, that happens more than it should at that rest stop. He shrugged it off, said the guy probably took off into the brush, and told me to move on if I could. I didn't need more convincing. I pulled out and drove another hour, all the while checking my mirrors, heart pounding. The image that stuck with me was the slow, deliberate way those footsteps circled my truck, like someone was hunting for an easy target. For weeks afterward, every time I stopped at a rest area, I'd check the locks twice, and sometimes I'd just keep driving through the night. Later, I heard from other drivers that strange things happen at that particular rest area. Vans left running with no one inside, trucks vandalized, drivers waking up to find muddy footprints on their steps. No one ever saw who was responsible, but a few said they'd heard footsteps or seen figures lurking by the tree line, always just out of the reach of the lights. That night taught me that danger doesn't always come screaming down the highway. Sometimes it moves slow, almost lazy, testing the locks, checking for someone asleep, waiting for the moment you let your guard down. I never saw that person's face, never learned what they wanted, and that's what makes it worse. The only thing that kept me safe was trusting the feeling that told me to stay alert. Every trucker has a story about the road that changed them. For me, it was the empty rest area outside Amarillo, the night I realized that sometimes the scariest thing is the silence and the shadows moving just beyond the reach of your headlights. When you've driven enough lonely highways, you learn that not every stranded car wants to be rescued. My name's Tyler Green. If you've hauled freight through Nebraska in the dead of winter, you know what it means to be tired, wired, and half frozen at 2 a.m. I thought I'd seen it all. Whiteouts, tornadoes, even a cow that somehow made it into the cab of a Peterbilt. But nothing shook me up like what happened just west of Omaha, at mile marker 142. It was the second week of January. Temperatures were hovering around 10 degrees and black ice glittered on the shoulder like broken glass. I was hauling a load of prescription meds, expensive stuff, the kind that draws attention if word gets out. The company made it clear, no unscheduled stops, keep moving, call if anything looks off. I'd already been behind the wheel since noon, my second energy drink cracked open, fingers numb even with the heater blasting. The highway was empty, as it always is between midnight and dawn. I was counting mile markers and debating whether to push through to Lincoln or call it a night at the next truck stop. I saw the lights before I saw the truck, hazards blinking in the dark, not far from an overpass where nobody in their right mind would pull over. But there it was, an old Chevy pickup, two-tone paint job, the blue faded to gray. As I drew closer, my headlights swept across the scene. The pickup was tilted awkwardly, one wheel clearly off the rim. The driver's side window was down despite the cold. A young woman sat inside, bundled in a hoodie, clutching her phone. Outside, a guy in a torn Carhartt jacket was waving his arms, half shouting into the wind. Normally, I'd keep rolling. It's not callousness, it's survival. Drivers have been ambushed this way for decades. But something about the guy's frantic waving and the woman's panicked expression gnawed at me. She looked about 25, scared and shivering. Maybe it was the cold, or maybe I'd had too many "what if that was my sister" conversations in my own head. Either way, my foot came off the accelerator. I eased my rig onto the shoulder, hazards on, and radioed my dispatcher. "Stopping to assist a vehicle, mile 142 eastbound. Will keep you updated." I locked the cab, keeping my cell in one hand and my big mag light in the other. The man jogged over, breath clouding the air. "Hey man, thank God. Our tire blew and my jack's busted. My girlfriend's freezing, phone died. Can you help us out?" His voice shook and he looked over his shoulder constantly, back at the truck, back at the shadows beneath the overpass. The Chevy was battered, the back bed lined with an old green tarp, bags and loose junk piled against the cab window. As he talked, I caught movement. Someone in the back seat pressed against the far window, just a blur in my periphery. I kept my distance. "I've got a jack. You sure you just need help with the tire?" I asked, scanning the scene for anyone hiding in the brush. "Yeah, man, please," he said. "We've been out here an hour. No one's stopped. It's freezing." His girlfriend leaned out the window. "Could you just call a tow? My battery's dead. Please, sir." Her voice was thin, shaking, but her eyes kept darting, scanning my trailer, the road behind me, the tree line. That's when I realized their blown tire didn't look right. There was no real rim damage, just a flat. And even in the bitter cold, no frost on the windows. The back seat windows were tinted, but now I could see the faint outline of a second figure slumped behind the driver. I played it cautious. "Stay in your truck, I'll grab my jack." I made a show of heading to my cab, glancing at the highway as if looking for traffic. Instead, I called 911, quietly, one hand shielding the phone. "I've got a possible roadside setup, mile 142 eastbound. Chevy pickup, 2 males, 1 female, tire blown, requesting patrol." I looked back. The man was pacing now, peering into the darkness. The woman watched me through the mirror, face tight. I shined my flashlight along the ditch, then slowly approached the pickup. "Let's see that tire," I said, kneeling down, careful not to turn my back. That's when I noticed more details. No tire iron, no tools, no debris, no sign of a real blowout. The guy hovered over me, too close, his hands twitching at his sides. "You truckers carry anything else?" he asked, voice too casual. "Like cash? Tools?" Red flag. No stranded motorist asks about cash. I stood, keeping my flashlight between us. "Nope, just this. You said you needed a tow, right? Highway patrol's on the way. I radioed them in." The man's face changed. Gone was the desperation. His jaw set hard. "You what?" I didn't flinch. "Protocol, buddy. Company rules. They'll be here in a few." He glanced at the Chevy. Suddenly, both back doors swung open. 2 more men stepped out, both big, both in dark clothes, faces half covered by scarves. They didn't look cold. They looked ready. I didn't wait. I backed away, fast, maglite up. "Back off," I barked. I already called it in. "Patrol's coming right now." They hesitated, exchanging a look. The woman's face went flat, all trace of fear gone. She slammed her door, shouting at the men in the back. I retreated to my truck, keys already out, watching them circle. One of them moved toward my trailer, as if checking the seals, maybe looking for something to cut. The leader tried to approach my cab, yelling, "Come on, man, we just need help." But there was no panic in his voice now, just frustration. I climbed into my rig, locked both doors, fired the engine, and laid on the horn, long, loud, enough to echo down the highway and maybe catch the attention of anyone nearby. The men backed off, the woman ducked down, and for a second nobody moved. Then, in the distance, blue lights flashed, a sheriff's cruiser cresting the overpass, heading my way. The group scrambled. The men jumped into the pickup, slammed it in reverse, and fishtailed down the shoulder, hazards still blinking. The sheriff pulled up as they roared past, barely slowing. He spun his car around and tore off after them, lights blazing. I sat in the cab, breath shaking, staring at my hands on the wheel. When the adrenaline wore off, I called dispatch and gave a full report. 20 minutes later, the officer returned, said the Chevy had ditched him at a back road turnoff. He took my statement, thanked me for calling instead of getting out, and said I wasn't the first to have a run-in at that spot. Word spread quick at the next truck stop. Other drivers shared their own close calls. Same truck, same trick, different faces. Some hadn't been so lucky. One guy lost his wallet and phone. Another got roughed up when he tried to help. That night I replayed every second in my mind. How easy it would have been to step into their trap. How the smallest gut feeling kept me cautious. I thought about how they switched from helpless to hostile in a heartbeat. How the flat tire was just bait. How the woman's fear was an act. Now every time I see hazards blinking on a dark stretch, I keep rolling and call for help from the safety of my cab. Maybe that makes me cold, maybe not. But out here you can't afford to be too trusting. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't the dark or the cold or even the highway itself. It's the people who know exactly how to play your instincts against you. That night at mile marker 142, I learned the hard way. Trust your gut, not their story. Most dangers wear a mask, but some put on a uniform. My name's Jeff Sanders. I've spent the last 16 years behind the wheel of one rig or another, and let me tell you, when you're alone with nothing but the hum of the tires and the glow of the dashboard, you get good at reading the road. You learn that quiet can be a blessing, but it can also hide things that don't want to be found. I never used to worry about stopping for road work or flagmen until one night outside Tulsa, when I realized not all uniforms mean safety. It was August, the kind of humid heat that clings to your skin even after sundown. I'd spent the afternoon crawling through construction west of Oklahoma City, lost an hour waiting for a flagger who seemed more interested in his phone than moving trucks through. By the time I cleared the last slow zone, I was already behind schedule, my dispatcher blowing up my phone with ETA updates. I just wanted a smooth ride, a little music, and maybe a cup of gas station coffee before the next way station. I was rolling east on Interstate 44, passing empty fields and the occasional farmhouse light in the distance. The GPS showed 50 clear miles to Tulsa. No road work, no detours. Just before midnight, as I came over a low rise, I caught sight of orange flashes up ahead. Not again, I muttered, thinking I'd hit another patch of night construction. Sure enough, cones narrowed the right lane, and a faded pickup with a light bar sat on the shoulder, strobes flickering. An orange "Road Work Ahead" sign bounced in the breeze, its base held down by a cinder block. I slowed, scanning for workers. My window was down, letting in a mix of diesel and sticky night air. As I eased into the left lane, I spotted a man in an orange safety vest and hard hat, waving a flashlight in slow circles. He stepped into the beam of my headlights, motioning for me to stop. No other trucks were waiting, no heavy machinery in sight. He walked right up to my cab and gestured for me to roll down the window. I sized him up quickly. Mid-30s, clean-shaven, white t-shirt beneath the vest, jeans with a fresh tear at the knee. The vest was bright, but plain, no company patches or reflective stripes. He didn't look sweaty, even though it was still pushing 85 degrees outside. His boots were spotless. "Sorry, driver, we've got a gas main leak up ahead," he said, voice brisk but polite. "Gonna need you to hold here for about 30-40 minutes max. Utility crews coming from the other direction to dig it up." He kept shifting from foot to foot, like he couldn't decide whether to keep talking or hurry off. He had the right attitude, just the sort of weary patience you expect from road workers, but there was something about the way he watched the darkness behind him, like he was expecting backup that hadn't arrived yet. I flicked my lights off and kept the engine idling. "Mind if I radio dispatch?" I asked, watching his reaction. He shrugged, trying to act casual. "Go ahead. Safety first, right? Just kill your engine, please. Gas leak, gotta minimize sparks." His words were right, but his timing was off. And there was still no sign of another crew, not even a reflective vest in the distance. Just the cones, the pickup, and the man standing alone in the glare of my headlights. I pressed the mic. "Dispatch, this is Jeff Sanders, eastbound 44, mile 277. Stopped for road work, supposed gas leak. No sign of crew. Anyone got this on their radar?" My dispatcher replied in seconds, voice sharp. "Negative, Jeff. No scheduled work in that area tonight. You're clear all the way to Tulsa on DOT reports. You sure you're not at a way station?" I didn't answer right away. I kept an eye on the flagman. He circled the cab, shining his light along the length of my trailer, then crouched by the rear wheels. I watched in the side mirror as he paused, looking up and down the road, then flicked his wrist. A quick, tight signal toward the brush beyond the cones. My gut tightened. I reached for my cell and pretended to scroll. In the glare of my work lights, I caught another shape, a figure ducking behind the far side of the pickup. No vest, no helmet, just a silhouette moving low and quick. My mind raced. Maybe they were legit. Maybe it was just an overworked road crew, short on staff. But every alarm bell in my head was going off. I snapped the work lights on, flooding the shoulder with harsh white light. The man by my cab jerked upright, his polite smile dropping. The figure by the pickup bolted, disappearing into the tall grass. I saw him clearly for a split second. Dark clothes, something metallic flashing at his side. Not a tool, not a flashlight, something heavier. I rolled up the window, locked both doors, and thumbed the air horn. 3 quick blasts, then a long, angry wail. The man in the vest backed away fast, pulling his hard hat down over his eyes. He hustled to the pickup, where 2 more shadows appeared from behind the open tailgate. They piled in, slammed the doors, and peeled out, cones flying, tires spitting gravel as they disappeared into the night. I sat there, heart pounding, engine revving, waiting for someone, anyone, to come out of the shadows. Nobody did. After a minute, I put the rig in gear and floored it, not caring if I clipped a cone on the way out. At the next rest stop, I checked my trailer. No damage, but clear footprints in the dirt by the doors. They'd tried to get in, maybe to steal cargo, maybe something worse. I called it in to Highway Patrol. The trooper who met me was blunt. "You're lucky. We've had 3 robberies in the last month, all on rural stretches. Guys dress up like road crews, block a lane, get a truck to stop, then force the driver out at gunpoint. If you hadn't kept your lights on or called it in, it might have gone different." The next morning, I got a call from another driver who'd heard my story over breakfast at a truck stop diner. He'd run into a similar scene 2 weeks earlier. Only difference, he stopped, stepped out, and wound up handcuffed in a ditch while they cleaned out his trailer. By the time he flagged down help, the fake crew was long gone. It shook me up in ways I didn't expect. I used to trust the process, see cones, see vests, follow orders, play it safe. Now every time I see a construction zone at night, I look for the details. Real work trucks, real equipment, other cars waiting. If it's just one guy with a flashlight and a pickup, I don't stop. I call it in and keep going. Out here, it's not paranoia. It's the only way to stay alive. You hear a lot about the dangers of fatigue, weather, or bad brakes. But the worst dangers wear a human face and sometimes a uniform. That night on I-44, I learned the only real protection you have is your gut. If something feels off, don't be afraid to look stupid. It's better than being another missing person on a forgotten mile of highway. Now, when I pass a line of cones, I keep my foot hovering over the gas, eyes peeled for anything that doesn't add up. The man in the orange vest, I never saw him again. But sometimes, when the road's too quiet and the lights flicker just right, I see him in my rear view, waiting for the next driver to let their guard down. Stay alert. Don't trust appearances. And if you're ever stopped by a work crew on an empty road, think twice. It might just save your life. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you see in your mirrors, it's what you don't. Name's Mike Daniels. I'm not superstitious, but I do believe in gut feelings, and I trust mine more than I trust GPS, Google reviews, or even other truckers. That instinct has gotten me through blizzards, dodgy bridges, and more close calls than I can count. But there was one night in Tennessee that shook my sense of safety in ways I never saw coming. It was late October, peak season for weird weather and even weirder stories on the CB. I was running a refrigerated load from Atlanta to St. Louis, trying to make Memphis by sunrise. The clock said 1:07 a.m. I was wide awake, but the road felt dreamlike. Endless rows of blacktop flanked by misty fields and twisted oaks. The kind of night where headlights only seem to make the darkness thicker. I stopped at a tiny, nearly forgotten rest area somewhere outside Jackson. It was one of those single-bathroom, 2 vending machine joints, old concrete, a flickering sodium lamp, and a payphone that probably hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. There were 2 cars in the lot, both empty, their windows fogged from the night air. My bladder won the argument with my nerves, so I parked, locked up, and headed for the bathroom. The air was so still I could hear my own footsteps on the gravel. Inside, the place was dead silent. No music, no hum of fluorescent lights, just a single weak bulb above the sink. I did my business fast, checked the stalls, habit, and on the way out, noticed something strange. The door to the supply closet was open, just a crack, and a faint whiff of cigarette smoke drifted out. I chalked it up to a janitor on a break until I glanced down and saw the floor. Dusty, except for a single set of muddy footprints leading out of the closet and right past me. The prints were fresh, wet mud still glistening. Whoever left them was gone, and it wasn't the janitor. I stepped outside, scanning the lot. Still empty. My truck was where I left it, trailer shining in the weird yellow glow. I hurried back, checking over my shoulder, and climbed in, locking up tight. That's when things got really strange. I started the engine, adjusted my mirrors, and noticed the passenger seatbelt was twisted, buckled, as if someone had just gotten out. I know for a fact I hadn't touched it since leaving Atlanta. The seat was slightly reclined, and there was a faint indentation, like someone had been sitting there leaning back. My heart was racing now. I swept the cab with my flashlight. Nothing. No sign of anyone. I told myself I was being paranoid, probably just tired. Maybe I'd forgotten I'd reclined the seat during a nap earlier. But the feeling wouldn't leave. I put the truck in gear and rolled out of the rest area, trying to shake off the unease. For the next hour, every time I looked at the passenger seat, it felt wrong. Sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I'd swear I saw the seat move, like the weight had shifted. About 30 miles up the road, the CB crackled, a local trucker warning about a string of break-ins at rest areas, all within a 50-mile stretch. Drivers would come back from the bathroom, get on the highway, and not realize until hours later that someone was hiding in their cab, sometimes in the sleeper, sometimes crouched in the back, waiting for a good place to rob them or force them off the road. That's when my blood ran cold. I pulled onto the shoulder, flipped on every light, and tore through the cab, checking behind the seats, under the bunk, everywhere a person could hide. Empty. No one there. But the sense of violation was just as strong as if I'd caught someone red-handed. I got back on the highway, nerves frayed. Every bump, every creak made me jump. I kept checking my mirrors, expecting to see a face pop up behind me. It never happened. But when I finally made it to a busy truck stop outside Memphis, I parked under the brightest light I could find and checked my truck from bumper to bumper. That's when I saw it, a scrap of mud-caked fabric wedged in the door seal on the passenger side. Not from my clothes, not from anything I'd hauled, just a reminder that someone had been in my space, if only for a minute. I talked to a few other drivers inside. Turns out, 2 of them had found their cabs unlocked after stopping at the same rest area. One guy found a cigarette butt in his cup holder. Another caught a stranger slipping out of his sleeper as he approached. The local police later confirmed someone was targeting truckers, slipping in and out of cabs in the time it took to use the restroom, sometimes hiding for miles before making a move. I never saw who it was. Never figured out if I'd just missed them by seconds, or if they'd decided I was too alert to try anything. But for weeks after, every time I stopped, no matter how tired, I'd check every door, every lock, every hiding place before setting off. That passenger seatbelt stayed twisted for a month, a reminder that danger doesn't always announce itself. Now, whenever someone asks why I never stop at isolated rest areas after midnight, I just say it's bad for my nerves. The truth. Sometimes the scariest story is the one that almost happened, the one where you don't see the threat until it's inches away. There are all kinds of predators on the road. Some come at you head on. Others slip in quietly, wait, and hope you never notice until it's too late. That night in Tennessee, I learned that what you don't see in your mirrors is what you should fear most. The truth is, out here, you're always one stop, one decision, one wrong assumption away from disaster. Nobody hands you a rule book for this kind of danger. You either trust your gut, or you learn the hard way. For these drivers, survival meant spotting the setup before it snapped shut, and never mistaking routine for safety. Most people will never know what it feels like to lock your doors with shaking hands, to second-guess every shadow, or to wonder if the next accident on the shoulder is bait. But if you drive long enough, you will. So let me ask you, What would you do, alone on a dark highway, when the safe option starts to look like the biggest risk of all? Drop your answer in the comments, and next time you feel uneasy on the road, don't ignore it. Out here, paranoia isn't a weakness. It's the only thing that keeps you alive. The truth is, out here, you're always one stop, one decision, one wrong assumption away from disaster. Nobody hands you a rule book for this kind of danger. You either trust your gut or you learn the hard way. For these drivers, survival meant spotting the setup before it snapped shut and never mistaking routine for safety. Most people will never know what it feels like to lock your doors with shaking hands, to second-guess every shadow, or to wonder if the next accident on the shoulder is bait. But if you drive long enough, you will. So let me ask you, what would you do, alone on a dark highway, when the safe option starts to look like the biggest risk of all? Drop your answer in the comments, and next time you feel uneasy on the road, don't ignore it. Out here, paranoia isn't a weakness. It's the only thing that keeps you alive.